Everyone on this chilly March morning. We start our county board meetings with public comment. And so if there's anyone here in the audience that would like to share some thoughts with us, could you please step up to the microphone, tell us your name and your address for the record, and try to keep your comments into 2-minute time period. If there's someone online, oh, please go ahead. If there's someone online, I'll call again a few more times.
Good morning. My name is Megan Cabley. I live at 1008 Juniper Street in La Crescent. I've lived there for about 10 years with my husband Clint and 2 daughters. We're here today. We're on the agenda to hope that you'll pass our petition to build our long-term family home on site. We have had many discussions with the planning department about what ordinance needs will be on site, and we feel like we can meet those requirements for site protection as well as any visual impacts that might be there on site. And I'm going to introduce Clint here for his 2 minutes as well.
Hi, my name is Clint Cabley. I live at 1008 Juniper Street in La Crescent. So we would like to build a home on this parcel. It's a small parcel. It was parceled off from a larger parcel that was kind of bisected by the County Road 1. So it is a small 3.68 acre parcel. It is not currently in farmland. It is all wooded. It is, it's not farmable. However, it's not on a particularly steep slope. So we're somewhere between 12 and 16% as far as where we would like to place the house. On February 16th, we went before the Planning Commission and the
Board of Adjustment.
Board of Adjustment to get a variance approved for a shop building that would be within the setback from County 1. And in the several weeks since, we've kind of focused more on wanting to move forward with the house more first rather than the shop building, although we may be looking to build the shop building concurrently with the house as we build the house. But what we're looking to build is a house that is looks as if it belongs with the landscape. We're looking to use natural materials on the outside of the house, a mixture of wood, stone, perhaps metal accents. But what we really want to do is build something that kind of looks like it grew there, looks like it belongs there. We're looking to do this for the long term, perhaps the next 25 to 30 years. I'm also looking to
Mr.
do all the.
Kabili.
Am I going too long?
You are. I
Okay.
apologize.
Okay.
And if it is possible that we might call you up later if there are questions. Thank
Absolutely.
you. Appreciate
Okay.
you coming,
Yep.
and
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Yep.
you so much. Is there anyone else here in the audience? Please step forward and tell us your name and address.
Hello, my name is Linda Johnson and I live at 32530 Bobcat Road, La Crescent. Today I would like to address an item that's on today's agenda, ranked choice voting, or RCV. The Center of the American Experiment polled 500 Minnesota registered voters on this question last month and found that only 20% claimed to be familiar with ranked choice voting, and only 34% of those 500 voters say that they support ranked choice voting. So why does Winona County even have it on its agenda? Ranked choice voting has some major problems, I think. It does not ensure one person, one vote. It can be very expensive. It's very confusing to voters. and it's not transparent. RCV disenfranchises voters. Voters rank candidates according to their choice. After you rank candidates in ranked choice preference, the tallies of the votes are counted in rounds. In round one, everyone's first choice is counted. They say a candidate must have at least 50% to be declared a winner. Sounds good, but let me explain further. If 50% is not declared on round one, it goes to round two. The last candidate in round one is eliminated. This means the voter, or the voters rather, who rank that candidate, the loser candidate, as number one, gets the rest of their votes counted by redistribution. That doesn't sound like one person, one vote to me. Some people may have their second or third candidate vote counted until a winner is reached. Only the loser candidates, or voters rather, get more than one vote, depending on how many rounds it takes. As I said, this process is supposed to be repeated until someone gets 50% of the remaining votes. However, in Alaska's recent ranked choice voting election, the winner only had 48% of the total majority vote after an arbitrary elimination process. The only way ranked choice voting gets a majority vote is by throwing out ballot data. It can take weeks to count ranked choice voting ballots, which means it's very expensive, extends the voting time, and can result in voter fraud. Voters want more transparency, not less. Let's make Winona County a great place to live, where it's one person and one vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in the audience that would like to share their thoughts?
I'm Bruce Lamette, 18379 Marie Drive, Houston, Minnesota, here representing CAM Systems. I'm here because the last county board agenda was a contract for drug, alcohol, and GPS monitoring. This is what I've been doing for the county for approximately 13 years. I started this for several reasons. Some of them are cost, dependability, timely manner of hooking up and removing devices, flexibility, and ability to allow caseworkers or agents to have access in real-time supervision with training to staff members at no cost to the county. The contract was tabled for another bid that I was not asked to do up front, and still do not know as why my company has not been reprimanded from the county since inception. So we've never been in trouble with the county. After the meeting, it was put in my hands to contact county for a bid. On 3/1 at 8:38 a.m., I called Winona County personnel to see who I would contact for this. Heidi answered the phone, giving me the direct number to Karen Sanis, and then transferred me to her phone. Left her a message, received no call back. 3/3, 10:44 a.m. I called Karen Sanis direct, left her a voicemail again, no call back. On 3/6, I called at 8:38 a.m., left her a message. Now she finally calls me back on 3/7, states to me that she's having a meeting on 3/8 with Karen Sonneman, the Winona County attorney, to discuss what to do. I asked if she would be calling me after that meeting that day. She stated she would be calling me on Thursday to have a discussion with me. She still has not called me today. Also, 3/1 at 2:02 p.m., I called Karen Sonneman, left her a message about what I was asking. No call back. 3/3, 10:47 a.m. Again called Karen Sonneman. No call back. Again on 3/6, 8:48 a.m. called Karen Sonneman, left her a message. No call back. At this time, I looked at the county board to look into this matter more in depth to see if any reason would make the county not follow through with me and allow a more competitive local company continue doing business with the county. Thank you. And I got copies.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here in the audience that would like to share their thoughts with us? Please step forward. Tell us your name and address. And
Good morning, board and distinguished staff. I'm Jerry Bigelow. I live in Winona County, 84 Saratoga Court, Winona Min. Also retired county employee. Just kind of back up a little bit with Mr. Omet said. Obviously, you know, I worked in a jail and I do know Mr. Omet. We worked together for years. When I'm talking about clients, I mean inmates. I always refer to them as clients because it's a small town. You bump into people. Well, who is that? Well, that's one of my clients. Okay, so that's why I say clients. All right, making GPS systems affordable for my clients, okay, and for the taxpayer because I know there are some units that the taxpayer has to pay for because this person don't have any money. So to be fiscally responsible, we want to make sure we open up to bids. Okay. When the technology first became available, I was one instrumental in getting this hooked up in a jail. Just give you a little brief history is whenever somebody wasn't at work and they were on work release, it was our job to make sure they were there. Okay. A lot of employers didn't like me poking around to see if my guy's there or not. And the other thing is we'd get a call from probably like somebody didn't like the guy saying he's in a bar right now. Well, now I got to go to the bar to see if he's there. So GPS system really said a lot of that. Also, when we had individuals who couldn't understand a no contact, it was really easy to watch to make sure they weren't bothering their victim. So when we started looking for these systems, there was a company out of Rochester, pretty much the only one we could find. So there again, when there's no competition, the vendor gets to kind of set the rules. And what we were finding out was I just really wasn't happy with the service. Okay. Sometimes they put the thing on too tight. They wouldn't come back and adjust it. Or their fees were pretty high. And they really didn't give us a lot of training as far as how the system was all about. Okay. Competition works best for the customer. It makes the vendor lower their price and improve service. Okay. Another thing I just want to bring up,
Mr.
for another
Bigelow-
job I have
Mr.
it-
Bigelow, I
almost done,
apologize.
almost
You-
done,
Okay, if you could
almost
please
done,
wrap it up. Thank you.
is Mr. Ouellette is in a minority. You can't tell by looking at him, but he's a veteran. Okay. He's also a disabled veteran. Okay. And veterans take up 6.4 of the population. So he's a minority. And also out of
Mr.
the
Bigelow, please,
service connected
Mr.
veterans.
Bigelow, you are now at 2.5 minutes. Could you wrap it up in one sentence for me, please?
Sure. Seeking competition is fiscally responsible. And if you're making someone who's forced to pay not have a choice, I don't think that's very fair.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in the audience that would like to share their comments with us? Please tell us your name and address, and I apologize, but in fairness to everyone, kindly try to keep your comments to 2 minutes.
I'll be short.
Thank
Good
you.
morning. My name's Jerry Pappenfuss. I live at 225 Main in Winona. I ask you not to consider ranked choice voting for Winona County. Making voting changes at this time is wrong because many county residents do not trust the Winona County voting system. Citizens are concerned about the unwillingness to update voter registration. Example, one person who died 14 years ago is still on the voter rolls. The state of Minnesota is being sued by the Public Interest Legal Foundation because Minnesota has not lived or cleaned up the voter rolls. Also, I believe that most Winona County residents have no idea what ranked choice voting is. Steve Simon is promoting a major reform bill in the legislature now. I believe it is wrong for Winona County to distribute biased information, such as the information that was included in today's agenda. I ask the commission to, instead of considering ranked choice voting, to commit to upgrading our voter registration lists. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in the audience that would like to share their thoughts with us? If you are on Ring Central via the internet, you can also share in the public comment period. If you would unmute yourself, maybe say something to catch our attention. I'm going to ask another time. Is there anyone else here in the audience or participating over the internet that would like to share in our public comment period? If so, please step forward to the mic or unmute yourself and get our attention. Hearing none, public comment is closed. Before we start our formal business, I wanted to check and see if County Attorney Sonneman is on the meeting.
Stephanie is.
Stephanie, I see, is there. I see a few guests, and I know that once you get into Ring Central, you can't change your name and you end up being guest. So,
Madam Chair, I'm not here on behalf, I was not here, asked to be here on behalf of Attorney Sonneman. I will stick around if she's not here, but I wasn't officially here for that purpose.
thank you for clarifying that. But I do not hear her, so I do not know that she is present. So, Ms. Nuttall, Attorney Nuttall, if you could stay, that would be great.
I will do that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we proceed with our agenda, the next item would be approval of county board minutes.
I'll move to approve the February 28th minutes. Second.
Okay, Commissioner Vagley has moved, Commissioner Olson has seconded approval of the county board minutes from February 28th of 2023. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
If anyone's opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Item 4 is to acknowledge receipt of approved committee minutes.
I'll move the acknowledgement of the acceptance of the approved meeting minutes, 4.1 Board of Adjustment, 4.2 Planning Commission, 4.3 Whitewater Joint Powers Board, and 4.4 Road and Bridge.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, Commissioner Ward has moved and Commissioner Vagley has seconded minutes for Board of Adjustment, January 19th of 2023, Planning Commission, December 15th of 2022, Whitewater Joint Powers Board, December 5th of 2022, and the Road and Bridge meeting from December of 2022. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And if anyone's opposed, please signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Next item is consent comments and approval of the agenda. Commissioner Ward.
I would like to pull 6.1 for some additional discussion.
Okay.
And I think maybe we all got a letter from a Goodhue County Commissioner requesting us to do at the end, a Mighty Mississippi Cleanup Challenge.
I did not.
Oh, okay. So,
Nor did I.
oh, all right. I'll share that with and put that as an item for future board action. Please.
Okay. All right. So if we move 6.1 and make that 7.00 under general business. Commissioner Olson,
Nothing from me.
Commissioner Vagley.
One comment at the end.
Okay. And I have one committee report.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. I just received a message from Ms. Sonneman. She will not be attending today.
Okay. County Attorney, Assistant County Attorney Nuttall, did you hear that?
I did, and I'll remain on here. I will remain on Zoom through the meeting today.
Okay, great. So Administrator Holte or Acting Attorney Nuttall, do either of you have adjustments for the agenda?
I do not.
I do not.
Thanks. Okay, so we have some adjustments to the agenda as it was in our packet.
Move approval of the amended agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Ward has moved, Commissioner Vagley has seconded approval of the agenda as it was modified. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
If anyone's opposed, please signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Administrator Holte, could you read the consent agenda for the record?
Absolutely. 6.2, approve amended and restated agreement with CASA 32 maintenance. 6.3, accept State of Minnesota Office of Justice Programs 2023 to 2024 grant and resolution for sexual assault interagency council. 6.4, approve resolution and agreement 1052087 with MnDOT for federal funds. 6.5, approve voucher payment to Blake Lumen for equipment and installation to remove contaminants from water. And 6.6, confirm payment of disbursement.
Thank you. Uh, In order to move forward, we would need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. I'll second that.
Okay, Commissioner Olson has moved and Commissioner Vegley has seconded a motion to approve the consent business as it was read. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
If anyone's opposed, signify by saying nay. Motion carries. We now move on to general business. 7.00 is to approve the condition, potentially approve the conditional use permit for Clinton and Megan Kabili.
Cable. I think it's pronounced cable. Cable-y.
Kabili, and it's
Apologize.
Megan, not Megan, so pardon me.
And I did ask to pull this, and in no means am I not supporting the application and the addition of, what I understand would probably be a very well constructed building. But I am questioning our own interpretation of our own rules and regulations. And I did ask a number of questions at the Planning Commission, and I did ask a number of questions from staff. But unfortunately, I have not supported all these rules and regulations through the past, but I see my job as being able to interpret the rules and regulations fair and consistently throughout the process. And first of all, when we looked at the application, one of the first items is that this is so these are some of my points, I'll lay them out, that I still have questions and concerns of how we're interpreting our rules. First of all, this is in an ag resource conservation district. And it says right in our zoning document, page 161, the purpose of the Ag Resource Conservation District is to protect the working agricultural landscape of Winona County as a means to ensure the continued viability of this resource as called in the comp plan. Well, yes, this land has not been farmed. There are farms around it and everything, but that's the primary purpose of this parcel by our zoning. Number 2 point is on page 14 of the Planning Commission agenda, about halfway down the page. Slopes on the site range from 12% up to 16 to 18% of the proposed building site and it is between 165 and 300 feet from the top of the bluff. Well, in our zoning ordinance 11.6.4, it does say anything 12 to 18% is allowed by a CUP and the 300 feet from the top of the bluff. Well, the shed, the wood shed, and if you look at the packet, page 15 of the planning zoning, there's a great big blue line that goes through it. And it says 300 feet from top of bluff. And again, I know this is just a rough sketch, but the way it is designed, not only is half the proposed wood shed, but 3/4 of the driveway is in that top of the bluff area that was so dearly wanted to be protected when all these zoning rules were put in place. So I do question that. The third point is on the planning packet, the proposed development within 300 feet from the top of the bluff will require a conditional use permit. Now, the Planning Commission was asked to do a conditional use permit on the house, but for some reason, we have not seen that we need to put a conditional use permit on this very large wood shed, which is obviously within the 300, by the map I'm looking at, the 300-foot top of the bluff. Number 4 that's of concern is the square footage of the wood shop. When we go to the square footage on home occupations, there is a factor that why don't I, my notes, the proposed wood shed is an accessory structure, which is allowed once a conditional use permit is granted for the house. But a home occupation, there's a footage, and the footage of this wood shop exceeds what we have outlined under home occupations for it's supposed to be a percentage of the main floor of the main dwelling. This wood shop is, I believe, larger than the whole dwelling. So again, it's our interpretation of the rules. And then the driveway. Proposed, and it says in our zoning packet, proposed building activities, including all structures and driveways that occurs within slopes between 12 and 18% shall be allowed only by a conditional use permit. So I think our interpretation, I think the Cableys can accommodate this, but I think our interpretation of the rules is much, I guess, looser than I thought the rules were supposed to be. And again, I know these are just approximate drawings and we haven't got definitive plans, but it is I feel it's problematic that, first of all, we were asked to grant a variance, and the variance was not for the bluff top or any location or any slope or anything. The variance was for building closer to a county road than is normally allowed. I found that problematic on the onset. And then not to address the wood shop in any kind of conditional use permit process, and location of the proposed dwelling and the slope and the things that, that are restrictive in our ordinance. And even I did ask, and thank you, Lou. Lou tried to explain to me the concerns, and it says, within the MRB, a CUP is required for any proposed building activity, including all structures and driveways that occur between 12 and 18% slope and within 300 feet of the top of the bluff. And it did say, in this case, the proposed dwelling is located within 300 feet of the top of the bluff and on slopes of 12 to 18%. So the dwelling we address, but we didn't address the shed. And it's in the next sentence, then it says the proposed shed and shop is just about 300 feet from the top of the bluff. So again, location is important. And I did find my note on the accessory, the square footage, home occupations. Accessory buildings cannot totally exceed the square footage of the main floor of the dwelling and approved through a conditional use process. And it looks like the wood shop is going to be, again, we don't have definitive plans, but it looks like it's much larger than the main floor of the main dwelling. So I guess, again, if these concerns can be addressed through the special conditions, but I don't feel that they were addressed at the planning commission level.
I don't know about the rest of you. I would like to offer the planning staff the opportunity to respond to Commissioner Ward's comments.
I will attempt to clarify. Thanks, Marcia, for questions. Regarding the home occupation, I'll start there. Those standards with the 1/3 of the square footage, those requirements, that applies to home occupations within residential districts. If you keep reading in that section, it'll say residential districts, which would be RR, UR, CD districts. So this is ag district, and so that limitation would not apply.
But it's not an ag operation.
Doesn't
It's
matter.
a wood shop. It
Doesn't matter. Yeah, no, just home occupations within those zoning districts is what we'd be looking at applying that standard to. So the square footage requirement wouldn't apply to this because it's in the ag district. And that makes sense because ag district has larger properties, you have bigger buildings. It's just part of the agricultural landscape, whereas a residential district is homes, smaller parcels, residential style garages as opposed to larger sheds in general.
Okay. And this is a very large 3.5 acre. Not really, in my opinion.
3.5 acre parcel, but it's
agriculture district. Okay, go ahead.
But it meets,
that's the rationale that's being used. Okay, applied.
that's the standard.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's home occupations. As far as the CUP and setbacks go, bluff standards, you're talking about the bluff setback. Well, countywide, if you have a bluff overlay district, there's a 100-foot setback from the top of the bluff. That applies in this location too. If you look at your mapping exhibits, and I have some here if anybody would like one, the bluff is clearly identified as the shaded area in the southwest corner of the map.
I'll take one.
Okay.
I have one that I printed myself, but I don't know, it's the same as what you're.
300 feet in the, I think that, I think I
Yep,
have
so
that
the
one.
bluff setback is 100 foot. If you're within the Mississippi River bluffs, that's 1 mile within county road or within Highway 61. So if you're within that buffer area, you're considered within the Mississippi River Bluffs overlay district,
This is.
which this is. And so you have those additional standards that are within the 300 feet from the top of the bluff. Those additional standards don't include an actual setback. It's just an overlay area where these additional standards apply. So those additional standards include the requirement for a conditional use permit if you're over 12% slope. It also requires a conditional use permit if you're within 300 feet of the top of the bluff. So those are the two standards, those are two requirements that are required within the Mississippi River Bluffs area. There's no actual additional setback. So the same setback as applies anywhere else in the county to top of bluff would still apply, which is 100 feet. So there's no like structural setback in addition to the 100 feet. So that's why no variance would be required, just the conditional use permit. If there were, let's say, 95 feet from the top of the bluff instead of 100, then a variance would be required in order to build in that
Say
location.
that again?
If they were less than the 100-foot setback, so if they were 95 feet from the top of the bluff instead of the 100, then a variance would be required.
Okay, so you're using a term setback and the other term you're using, the 300 feet is just a
It's an overlay area.
overlay.
You could,
Okay.
I mean, I think that's a better way to differentiate between the two.
Okay.
So it's not a structural setback.
Okay, so you're saying 100 feet is a defined,
Structural setback, the same as like a 130-foot setback from the center line of a road or 20 feet from a side yard property line. The 300 feet is not that. It's just an overlay that includes additional standards.
okay,
Does that make sense?
still gray, but yeah.
I get it. There's different lines and they represent different things. So it can be a little confusing.
Just for my clarification, you're saying within 300 feet, there's special conditions, but the
Mhm.
setback isn't 300 feet.
Correct. Yeah.
Setback is 100.
It's always 100 feet from the top of the bluff.
Yep.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yes. And then getting towards what the overall scope of the permit was, the variance was for the shed, which was less than 100 feet or whatever the setback was. I can't off the top of my head here. I'd have to
From the
look.
road.
So 130 feet from the center line of the road, maybe. So it was less than that. So that's where the variance came in for the shed. Once that was approved, then we were really just looking at, for the planning commission, we're just looking at the development on over 12% slope, between 12 and 18% slope. And yes, that would apply to accessory structures, driveway, or primary structures like a dwelling. In this case, we were looking at the overall proposal, but it really does come down to the home because that is the primary structure, and without the home, the shed isn't allowed.
Right.
So-
And so I do have an issue with timing there because I'm seeing in my neighborhood a number of sheds being built without any homes. And I'm assuming, I haven't visited them, and it's again, it's okay with me, but again, it's this interpretation of the rules that they're starting to use those sheds as homes.
Well, that's a trend
so
too,
it's
the shouse or the.
timing. It
yeah.
was timing because, and Mr. Cabley did call me and he said they're kind of shifting their emphasis more towards the house than the shed. And this was a big concern with some of the neighbors, is that we're going to allow this shed and by our rules, the house, and I think you just said it, the primary dwelling has to be built, then it's considered an accessory structure. And initially the Cabley said, well, we're going to build the shed. And I totally understand, build the shed and use it to work out and finish your house. I totally understand that. And it makes all the sense in the world. But again, the way it was addressed through our process, we approved the shed before we approved the house. And that isn't what our rules say. And that's what some of the neighbors are very concerned about, is that we get this shed built up there and then economics or, finances play into, and the house never gets built, but we have a shed on a 3.5 acre, parcel. Where the control mechanism there is that, well, we take them for their word that yes, they're going to build the house.
Generally, they have to go through the permitting process. So they have to go out and they have to get septic designs. They have to, in some cases do surveys. They have to get their plans in order for their development certificate. So it's a significant cost and
You have to drill a
an
well.
outlay,
Yeah,
for
drill a well.
for just getting their permits. They have to be kind of ready to build, and they're spending money not on our permits per se, but for the plans and the designs that they're going to need to actually build the infrastructure on the property. So we haven't had a problem with people, getting to that point and actually going through permitting and being issued septic permits and development permits. Once they do that, we look at the site as being approved for both a home and for whatever accessory structures are there. And at that point, we have allowed them, if they want to build the shed first as opposed to the home, that's fine, because on paper, it's all been approved as such. So whether they do it or not, they could do it. It's approved, going in the future. I mean, we recognize that that a lot of people have needs as far as you go back in history, generally in agricultural areas, especially, the barn was always built first. You look at immigrants to this country, it was always the barn was built first. You would move it in the barn. Maybe the sauna was built so you could clean. And then, over time, you built that house. That was the least important thing on the property. And so in ag district, that is just, it's part of what people need to be able to do at times. The shed needs to be built first for whatever reason, to store, equipment, to store materials for building the home. So it's not common. It doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen at times, and we have tried to accommodate that. And we haven't had a problem, not necessarily for widespread in the county, for sheds being built without homes in those circumstances. So I guess I understand the line of questioning and the concerns, but that's where we're
To
coming
address
from.
slope. Now, again, I know.
Can I wrap up that topic first
Sure.
before we move to the slopes? Thank you, Commissioner Ward. So Lou, is it possible to put a condition on that specifies that the house is going to be built, or is it sufficient? I know that, so I've heard this before. On page 37 of our packet are the conditions. And the first one is that the owners of the property to which this conditional use permit is issued will abide by all representations and commitments made during the permitting process, as well as before the Planning Commission, in accordance with all conditions. Now, is it sufficient for us to say, to confirm with them now, to ask them the question, you are planning to build a house, and then this is really a part of the record, so that is a part of the requirement?
You could if you wanted to. It's that'd be fine if you wanted to consider something like that.
Okay, so Megan and Kurt, could you come to the podium? Clint, yeah, sorry, forgive me.
Cabley.
Thank you, Commissioner Ward, I appreciate it. Yeah. We just want to confirm that you have every intention of building the home. And we might think it's
do.
part of the public record.
Yeah,
Yes.
and in recent weeks, we've retained the services of an architect in Alaska, and we have moved forward with preliminary sketches and designs of the house. we really did shift our focus just in the last few weeks in terms of, we actually started thinking that we really wanted to get the house going sooner rather than later. So that is our intention.
Thanks. All right. Commissioner Ward, please
Yeah,
proceed.
question then, Lou, slope. It does say driveway. And again, I know this is just a rough sketch, but you know, we have this thing about emergency vehicles getting to properties. And emergency vehicles are not getting smaller, they're getting larger. And is this driveway going to be on more than a 12% slope?
So the standards that were adopted in 2011, they're twofold. So there's the standards that we were talking about of 12 to 18% require CUP in the MRB district. That's addressing the slope that the home is being placed on or the driveway is being placed on. Okay. There's also a standard for grade of driveway. So the grade of the driveway cannot exceed 12%. And so that would be the cut slope. You're coming down the slope like this. And if you look on there, there's a bend, it comes back around. So the surface of that driveway, the grade of the driveway itself cannot be above 12%. It can go onto a slope of, this is in this case between 12 and 16%. It varies. So it'll be a 12 to 16% slope that the driveway will be going onto, but the grade of it will be such that it will not be over 12%.
And it will be built to accommodate fire apparatuses?
Yep. And so it'll have to, if it's longer than 300 feet, and this is a standard that we'll have to look at it within for the development certificate. But if it's longer than a 300-foot driveway, then there has to be, there's turning radius that's looked at and turnarounds at the end of the driveway. So there has to be able a way to come in and turn around and go back out. If it's less than 300 feet, those standards don't apply though.
Okay. Okay. And it looks like, well, I don't have a map. But...
And Commissioner Ward, it also condition 2 says that the new driveway shall adhere to the standards
right
described in our zoning
right
ordinance, and
but
that they have to get the highway permit. So,
but our zoning ordinance doesn't. I'm not that familiar with the detail of the grade and the slope and I know we've got homes again where we got cow path driveways going to, and my local fire people are very concerned that they can't get to them. And their first goal is to, put out any fire or reach any, emergency. And they're concerned with what some things have happened in the past.
although in this case, our purview is to really work off of the zoning ordinance, not ideas that we wish had been incorporated into the
Right,
zoning.
but we can avoid catastrophic situations by zoning the right driveway. I mean, seriously, we can. I mean,
That's true.
yeah, I distinctly remember, and I'm not sure if she still lives there, Judge Margaret Shaw Johnson, where she lives. She lives up on top of a hill, and to get there in the wintertime is catastrophic.
Actually, she lives by Lake Winona now.
Okay, she moved. Yeah, I thought she moved. It was always an interesting journey, even in the summertime, to get to her house. And one of the other things that one of my constituents, the neighbors, had asked, is there a possibility to, and again, these are just rough drawings, to switch the proposed wood shop to what I would call the south and the east versus the north and the west of the lot? Is there any magic why they're placed there? And maybe the Cableys can answer that. They're thinking of noise.
Well, I know
Choose.
that did come up at the Planning Commission meeting, and I did discuss with Clint and Megan that a little bit. So I'll attempt to answer, and if you guys wanted to jump up and add anything, you can feel free. But one of the considerations that they were looking at there is that putting it the way that it is now, the opening to the garage would be facing away from the neighbors to the east. If there is any noise coming out of the place, it's gonna, if the garage door is open, it's gonna come out of that and go in that direction. If you flip it around, you might gain an extra 50 feet, further away. but that garage door would then be open facing them. I don't think that that's going to really fix any kind of noise issues. That said, I mean, they're looking at something that's over 200, 250 feet away from the neighbors. That's in between is forested. Honestly, I mean, that seems adequate.
Well, I've been asked to ask, so I'm asking.
It's
I'm
not
doing my
something that I
job.
would be concerned with. If it was like something that was on the property line, up against the property line, and it was something that was abnormal in the ag district, I mean, running a circular saw isn't something that's, I would say, abnormal within the agricultural zoning district in general.
And that brings up the question is, the shop is being called a wood shop. Are there standards that have to be applied according to the Minnesota Fire Code and everything in running a wood shop with combustible materials and wood materials and things like that? Are there standards that the fire marshal enforces, or do we have any role as a county to enforce any kind of fire marshal laws and rules?
We would not. No, we don't have any authority there. We don't have a building code per se. This isn't a public space. If it was public in nature, then there's additional requirements that do come into play, or semi-public, but this is not. So yeah, that's not something that we would get involved with as a zoning issue. We do reference a lot of the noise and smell, some of those state statutes in our ordinance, but it's really just referencing that there's a state statute that it pertains to that.
You're referencing cow manure, not wood shavings and things in our ordinance. So that does bring another question that one of the neighbors had. In the future, if this wood shop would become a commercial and retail where people would be coming, and how would that be addressed? Would that need to change the conditional use permit? You're saying it's just the individual, there's no commercial, there's no signage, there's no foot traffic and everything. If that changes in the future, how is that addressed?
So if it meets that threshold within Chapter 9 for home occupations where it becomes a CUP, so there's permitted uses for home occupation, and then there's thresholds for requiring conditional use permit. So if it triggers any one of those requirements for a conditional use permit, they would need to come in and apply for that. And that'd be a separate permit. It wouldn't be amending this one. It'd be a new conditional use permit for a home occupation. And that's something we'd have to review at that time to see if, if there is something that's.
So one of those
being
conditions
triggered.
is even adding a couple employees, correct?
Right. If there's more than one employee not part of the family who's working at that location, then that's a trigger for requiring a conditional use permit.
Right, because that question was asked also.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Commissioner Olson?
I think they were answered, my questions.
Fabulous. Okay. Is there any further discussion?
I have a question. How many other little 3.5 acre parcels do we have along Apple Blossom Drive? Apple
There's a
Blossom Drive
bunch.
has changed considerably in the last 20 years.
I mean, there's a bunch within. I mean, there's a bunch that a lot of them were laid out as 5 acre parcels.
5 acres, and that was Dr. Scamp.
Yeah, and there was, and that was late 80s, and he laid out a whole bunch. So that at that time, that really did change the character of that neighborhood quite a bit. And then since then, there have been a few, here and there that have been, in this type of, ballpark. I generally think that like our minimum lot size is 1 acre. That's the minimum for building in the county in the ag district. And you have to accommodate primary and secondary septic system plus home and access well. And I really think that 1 acre is too small in most circumstances to be able to accommodate all that. Maybe in perfect conditions, you can do it. But for the most part, it's pretty tight. But 3.68 acres, you're looking at having a little bit more leeway there. And, as long as there aren't any
But it's not
huge
flat.
limiting factors.
But
Yeah.
it's not flat.
Yeah. And that does play into that. And, looking at septic systems, they're going to have to get out and do borings and see what they can come up with for a septic system. It always gets a little bit more expensive on slopes.
And a very expensive well too, because
It's going to be a deeper well, likely. a bit expensive there.
We
So
don't control wells. We don't require a permit on wells. That's,
that would be Department of Health, and we are a delegated county. So Ross Dunsmore works within that program. Yeah.
just a sidelight. I had a doctor that owns one of the Skemps, and he said, before I even put a block in the ground for a house, I've got $100,000 invested in septic and well when you live up there. So I mean,
Sometimes,
it's a huge endeavor to build on the God's country.
I did take a trip up there and it really took a little count, and it looked to me like probably 40% of the homes have a building that is closer to the road than the home is. I mean, there are some beautiful homes up there, but I also felt like that the staff report really talking about the character of the neighborhood. I felt like, yeah, there are plenty of other places within half a mile. There's an apple orchard that has a big cement block building, and that's really what you see it's right up on the highway. So I'm going to support this passage of this.
Well, it's an interesting neighborhood because at the Road and Bridge community, we're discussing cattle passes. And there are several active cattle passes on County Road 1, and we're going to replace them. So it still is agriculture. But yes, the residential has been infringing on it over the last 25 years and stuff. So neighborhood change. Well, thank you. I mean, again, my job, I see it as to try and interpret these rules and regulations and to be able to explain to my neighbors why we're doing the things we're doing. And there were quite a few concerns about
Absolutely.
that.
And thanks for the questions. We're all happy to answer them when they come up. So.
Thank you. But Commissioner Meyer, I wish you would have ridden your bicycle on County Road 1 because it's quite
I have, but only in the summer.
it's a rough road, and we will be redoing that this summer.
Mr. Olson.
I watched both the Board of Adjustment meeting and the Planning Commission meeting, followed this permit, and I will move to approve 6.1, which is 7.0.
I'll second that motion.
Commissioner Olson has moved and Commissioner Vegley has seconded approval of the conditional use permit for Clinton and Megan Kabili. I get the last name right this time? Kabley. All right. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Vegley has his hand up.
I just want to thank Commissioner Ward for doing due diligence. Those are important questions to ask. It's difficult when you have the city mice wanting to move out next to the country mice, and it's difficult to make make everyone happy. So thank you for asking those questions. Thank you to Lou and all the staff for answering those questions and for all the other information that was gathered during this process. So I know this is a tough issue. The balance between property rights and bluff issues, et cetera, and letting the farmers be farmers. This is a tough issue. So thanks to everybody who was involved in this process and to the Kableys for all your work as well.
Commissioner Ward.
You did reference possibly an additional condition of the timing of the building of the house and the shed, or are we taking, of course, it's all publicly recorded and everything that the Kableys have said. And with the phone call, Mr. Kabley did indicate they've shifted somewhat emphasis to the house first over the shed.
Yeah, that was my point of asking them to come up because things that they stay here during the public permitting process they are agreeing to those.
I'll ask Stephanie Nuttall, Assistant County Attorney, is verbal commitment stronger to defend or written conditional things stronger to defend or oppose?
In general, having it specifically in writing would be more defensible. I think in this particular case, I don't have those concerns given the progress that they've already made toward building the home.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Is there further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approval of the conditional use permit for Clinton and Megan Kabley, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Please say nay. Motion carries.
First time we got it right.
I know. Well,
I'll be
wrote it-
watching because
I
I
wrote it
drive
down
that
with
road
phonetic
frequently.
spelling
I'll be
on that.
watching.
Okay, this moves us to the last bit of our business. Commissioner Ward, you had a request for board action?
Yes, I received a letter from County Commissioner Linda Flanders from Goodhue County. And I guess I apologize, I assumed everybody received it. She is proposing a Mighty Mississippi Cleanup Challenge. So I'd like to put this on a future agenda to discuss if we want to.
Do you want to move it to the committee of the board?
Well, we can move it to committee of the board. Maybe committee of the board is better because it needs to be between April 15th and May 15th.
I'll second that request.
That is all that is required for moving it to that process. Commissioner, do you have anything else?
No.
Nope, that's it. Okay, Commissioner Begley, you had a comment.
Two things. First of all, I went to the Soil and Water Conservation District meeting last week. I want to thank Supervisor, Elsing is in the back of the room, and the others. I really enjoyed the meeting. It's been 12-ish or more years since I've been to one of those meetings. I also want to thank Wanda Anderson, Bill Roenkamp, and Andy Cronenbusch for going up to St. Paul to talk about different soil and water conservation issues with our state legislators. And it seems like these are one of those rare instances where these are nonpartisan issues, or there's agreement across the aisle in terms of soil and water conservation. So I appreciated my time with the Soil and Water Conservation District supervisors and want to thank the folks who went up to St. Paul. The second thing I want to talk about is, and this, I don't have a solution to this, but in the future, could we maybe, just so for people who are, I know it's tough during the public comments to know where you are time-wise. Is there a way that we create some kind of visual timer?
We used to have that.
Okay, just so the people who are speaking can know where they're at in the process, just so that is tough. I've been on both sides of that, and I know it's helpful if you know like where you are time-wise. So maybe, I don't know if that's a staff thing, or I don't know if we can add it during Ring Central as well, or if there's some kind of visual that the speakers can see. So just to avoid, so just folks, they can get in what they want to have said.
We'll work something out.
Thank you.
Because we used to have that.
Yeah, thank you, and that's it.
You usually start at 1:59.
Gets 1 second. I just wanted to report to you that Ms. Harms from the water planner for the county sent a note. I believe I got it because I'm on the WinLAC planning committee, but the request has been passed by all of the parties who are going to be part of the agreement. So it should be moving forward to the state. So great. And that having it done in time qualifies us for the next round of funding. So that was kind of the goal, is to make sure we got that. Is there anything else?
Motion to adjourn and maybe a 5-minute recess.
I'll second that motion.
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing
Well,
none?
just to clarify, this is our first time doing it, and with this new process, 5-minute break, then we're going to committee of the board, just for the audience
Yeah.
members.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We are adjourned. Committee of the board to the county, Winona County Board. And am I right? We treat this like a working session, and so our rules are less formal. We do not have to call each other by title, and we can sort of just, we won't be making any motions, but we will be free to discuss the topics on the agenda. And if there's any decision to be made, then it actually moves next to appear on a county board agenda.
Chelsea?
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Does she want to join us or is she just watching us?
So my understanding, and this is what I have relayed to management, is that the intent of the committee of the board is for the board to have discussion to determine if you want to move it forward to a regular board, in which then staff would participate.
Okay, that sounds great. So ranked choice voting, the request is really not anything more than we entertain a presentation about what ranked choice voting is. And this is a very simple thing. I understand there's even maybe some issues with this. But my request was really just to have the presentation and learn more about what's involved in ranked choice voting. Not to make any further decision about that, because I understand that there's legislation at the Capitol now that's going to be heard. I think I read this morning on Thursday. And I did take a quick look at the statute.
17th or something like that. Well, the question, are we even is this a state issue, a federal issue, Or does it even come down to local county governments running elections allowed to do this? That's unclear to me.
Yeah,
that
the
we're even
legis,
allowed to
yeah,
do it.
what I understand about the legislation is that it makes it an option for us. That the request that the legislation that's at the state level would make it an option for counties to choose to do, but they wouldn't have to choose to
And
do
can we
it.
put that to a public referendum vote, or would 5 county commissioners decide?
No, I don't know. I think it depends on the legislation.
I'm in favor of listening to a presentation. Going into the presentation, um, uh, I'm very in favor of, there's different names for it, ranked choice voting. I know I'm not proposing that it's not possible to do it, nor should we try to do it, like for the special election to fill Steve Jacobs' chair. If this were in place, you could have the primary. You wouldn't need a primary. You wouldn't have to wait an additional 3-4 months between the primary and the general election, et cetera. It's simply, it's more accurate. It's cheaper overall. I think
Now, these are your opinions.
These are my
'cause I've
opinions.
got-
You're
Right,
right,
but we
you're
are
right.
asking to learn more.
Yep, so this is just going into it. This is where my starting point. I asked Chelsea Wilbright, like, for an approximate, like, ballpark figure about how much this primary would cost. She's not sure, but she said she would guesstimate somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000, maybe less, maybe more, et cetera. And it provides for more accurate results. And you're less likely to have a small minority candidate win in a divided field. There's definitely the fear of the unknown. And it's important to always have safeguards, built in place in terms of the counting of it. But it's actually a number of different, at the city level and at different levels, people have been trying this for a number of years. This isn't something. This is something that a lot of people, there's a proven track record with it. So those are just my opinions going into it. Now, some people are worried because of what happened in Alaska, and I'm concerned that that there's partisan reasons why some folks will just dismiss it, from the beginning. But if you look at it, sometimes it also goes the other way as well. So those are just I'm personally interested in listening to a presentation.
Well, and that would be fine, because I have a lot of questions. I have a lot of that don't make sense to me. But we can't, and this document is a very pro. So if we want to have a presentation, we need the con. We need both sides, because Mr. Papenfuss referenced what are the cons to it. We can't have just the pro voice to it. So if you can come up with a pro and a con speakers, to learn more about it. I don't see it as being more clear. I think it's more confusing. It's under the assumption that we have a very educated voting public. And I'll give the instance, when we go to the general, it's a little bit different, but when we go to the general election, I flip over the backside of that ballot and I've got all these judges. I have no idea who they are, what their stance are. They haven't. Now they're running unopposed. That makes it different. But they haven't put out any papers or documents saying this is who they are. Right now I'm watching a very contested Wisconsin Supreme Court justice on TV. They're battling out and they're getting very, very nasty. Both of them are very nasty. But they don't put out any paperwork, like who they are or what they stand for.
That's a different issue. Yes, I hear you. Yeah.
But that's part of the election process. And I think you're right. What happened in Alaska, it's very confusing. It's not clear. It's not transparent. There's a lot of extra counting. I don't see it being necessarily in a big election. In a small election, it could probably be cheaper, quicker. But in a big major election, I think it could be a real, and the distrust in our voting machines and our tabulating systems. Right now, it doesn't sound like it's something that Minnesota even should be considering. But again, if you want to do a pro, which this paper was, we need a con at the same time to make it fair.
And we could discuss a different presentation later on, but we could, I'm sure we're going to hear from folks on both sides of the issue. I also wanted to add, to me, as important is it also tends to change the tone of elections. Because in America, with Dominion voting and the lawsuit against Fox News, it shows how facts are often take up, far distant second place, to fear over, viewership, or, the truth is always for sale. I think it's very important to shift the focus from all these negative ads, which just turns people off to the whole process. It tends to shift wherever you see it. It's not magical and it's not always the case, but it tends to turn it makes the campaigns shorter, which some people would like, and it also makes them more positive, less likely to be so negative driven, et cetera. Because what people are essentially doing is the short version is that they know that they may not be able to win by getting 17 or 30 or 35% of the vote. So they have to appeal to a wider cross section of the population. It's not just their little wedge issue and their 25% of the population they realize that in order to get over 50%, we have a lot of cases in this country where people take office with less than 50% of a vote, et cetera. So it tends to lead towards not magical and not always the case, but more positive campaigns as well. But it's a presentation and we're not going to do anything soon. And we need to wait for state legislation, but yeah.
German, what?
I think it's frankly, other countries have different systems. And there's ways to test drive it. There's ways to give people, practice in terms of like just literally indicate 1, 2, 3, or if you want just one or just 1 and 2, you don't need to vote for 3 or 4 candidates. It's pretty simple. And it's also possible to require, just like we do now, backup paper copies. So if things were challenged, they could be challenged. So.
I have to question that though. The one article I was reading, they kept using the term exhaustive ballots. And so when you vote and then your person doesn't get the number 1, but maybe I misread it. If you only vote for 1, it seemed like it got thrown out right away too. Now maybe I misread it.
If your only candidate if the 4 of us ran and none of us got 50%, let's say that you got 38% and the rest of you were in whatever, and I'm at 5%, mine would be redistributed. And then you would see if someone got closer to or whatever. So that's where one person would be taken. That's what happens during the primary. It combines the primary and general election into one. It makes a shorter season and it's also cheaper because you don't need to run primaries, which have incredibly low voter turnouts.
But if I voted if a voter elected not to rank choice, they just didn't. They voted for one person.
Right. If they voted for me and I'm low person, then that vote's gone.
Right. So it takes away that one person, one vote concept, basically.
We don't have, it's interesting that term because we don't, in terms of the US presidential election, electoral college, which is a whole different issue.
That's a whole different thing.
Yes. Yeah. That's a different issue. How someone can win when they have 3 million less votes than somebody else. One person, one vote is out the window. That's a different issue.
It's a
different discussion, etc.
Okay. So why don't we just put it on the back burner till the state legislature mans it and crams it down our throat, and then we have to deal with it.
I think it won't hurt to hear a presentation that in terms of information, and then go from there. And then if need be, if we're going to get closer to actually making a decision, then we could bring in a con later on. But
no. It has to be at the same time, in my opinion.
It'd be a longer meeting, but sure.
It would. I would say, let's just wait to see what happens in legislation, to know what our timeline would be to take any action, is what I'm saying. And I think they're meeting the 17th. I read somewhere, I think the 17th, there's a hearing, maybe. Is that this week? That would be.
I think it'd be great to know sooner rather than later, but that's just me.
Well, it wouldn't be this, I mean, there'd be a timeline. It wouldn't be this next election, I don't think.
I can't imagine. When I read the statute, it also talked about a committee to study it. So
yeah.
Well, since we don't vote at committee of the board, we could do a ranked choice.
No, actually, when that came up though, I thought maybe there might be some times where we do have a vote. It's a non-binding vote, but like, how do we decide to move something to a normal business meeting or not? Because we used to, I believe, in the committee of the board, even though it's a work session, there are times when we need to decide to move it forward or just table it or let it sit, etc.
That's why Ms. Holte recommended we maybe need to do some tweaking to how we do things. And I've been checking with some other county commissioners how they bring things forward and to make their meetings work and stuff. And even Olmsted County is one example. As big as Olmsted County is that they run everything through their committees before it comes to a county board. So they get staff input and commissioner input and things like that. But they have a much different structure than we do in their other committees.
This is a work session, so it's just a chance to discuss something informally, to decide to put it on the actual business meeting.
I would be open to either hearing the presentation here or hearing it at a regular committee. I would also be open if there's a different group that would like to give a presentation to hearing it either here at a committee of the board or hearing it at a regular board meeting sometime in the future.
That's actually a good point. We could hear it at the committee of the board so that no one's worried about us doing anything. It's just information.
Yeah.
It's also a chance to educate the public or inform the public of the pros and cons of it, to start a public discussion. Actually, it's
I would support that.
But let's wait to see what legislation happens.
well, it's
That's going to happen relatively soon.
going to take us a while anyways. Maybe to aim for like the night meeting in April.
How about in 2025?
Having the presentation at the night meeting in April of the committee of the board.
Yes.
Okay, that's cool with me.
Is that okay, Marcia? I mean,
Well, that doesn't, I'm sorry, I don't know if I can get a different group to come that quick. That's fairly quick.
I think we already have folks in house that would.
My guess is they could recommend somebody, yeah.
Yes.
I don't see the urgency to push it through that quick.
It's at the beginning of a discussion that will take a long time to study and discuss and work through.
Why don't we say May or June? I mean, give us a little bit more time. I mean,
How about the night meeting in May? Is
that would be better.
that okay?
Okay.
All right. So
If I
aim
have to
for-
rank choice vote, yeah, I'll go
Well, I mean, if you
May of
guys- if you want-
2025.
If you want to, I can help with that. It's not that hard to figure out.
May of 2025. No, I think my ballot would be the term exhausted, and I don't like that term. Or eliminated, mathematically eliminated.
So to clarify, we're going to look at a presentation
Mhm.
by that group.
Yep.
And the,
Any group.
yeah. well, and
By that group, but
and then
also,
Also, if Marcia, you can find somebody else who wants to also present.
What, at May, what's the date? Somebody have a
so
calendar?
it's the second meeting in May.
Twenty-third.
May 23rd, evening meeting? Okay.
Okay.
At the committee of the board?
Yep.
Not the regular meeting?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
I think the time has come to at least listen to and discuss it. It's actually frankly overdue because America has one of the lowest voter turnout rates.
Okay,
compared-
so Ms.
Yeah.
Wilbright is telling us she won't be here that day.
I have my annual military tour, the last half of May. So the night meeting in May, I won't be here.
Okay, and you should
Try
be.
to Zoom, yes,
No, you should
No,
be.
I-
So
I-
let's do June.
that would work.
Okay, June, give us a new date, Ms. Holte, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
– 27th.
Correct.
June 27th, okay. Even better. All right. Yeah, win some, you look.
Okay, any further discussion on that topic? Not. Our second topic is potentially making our night meeting and the committee of the board, which is before it, a little bit earlier. I think this was Commissioner Ward and Commissioner Bagley's idea.
Yeah, I thought maybe it might help staff, because they end their business day at 4:30 technically, and they're hanging around till, 7. And it was always predicated on farmers being able to get their cows milk, come into a meeting, but most of them have much more flexibility nowadays than they did in the olden days. I just thought it would be a more efficient use of time, have a committee of the whole at like 5 o'clock and then 5 and then 6 start the regular county board meeting. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
Administrator Holte, you please go ahead.
Yes, I'm going to ask if Heidi can unmute and give us an update. I had her do a quick survey of management to see if
Okay.
there were any issues or concerns.
Great. Yeah.
And just to get what we could prior to this meeting. So
Sure.
Heidi, can you unmute?
And if we were to seriously move forward, we could give staff
Yeah.
more time together. This is just like a
Yep.
a quick sense of the body.
Hi, yes, I'm here. I am looking at some of the survey results.
You have to say it like a game show. Survey says.
And quantify who the survey was, how many participated in the
Kirsty CK.
case, got something.
Okay, we're waiting for Heidi, but
Sure. I did not, on behalf of the Planning and Environmental Services Department, have a chance to weigh in on the survey. And I would, I believe, speaking for my department, say that we would be in favor of that because we are kind of hanging out. So, but, I defer to what the board wants and we will, of course, respect that. But if it's possible to move it up a little bit and it makes sense for other departments and participants, great.
Thank you.
thanks.
Because there's many county boards that don't have an evening meeting across the state. They're all daytime meetings, which
Heidi?
Yes, I'm here. I'm just trying to get in here. Apologies.
Well, I'll jump in while Heidi is gathering information. I'm open to the idea of other local units. I think it's very important to keep night meetings just for public access. My druthers would be to have them all be night meetings, but I understand there's a reason why county boards have it as morning day meetings as well, which I understand. But I think that city council, school boards, they start earlier. To me, there's two groups to be very concerned about. The staff is very important, but even more important is public. But we can also change it. And then if we get feedback from people that it interferes with milking or other, family schedules, we can always move it back. We shouldn't do it too often.
well, we have this option now.
Yep.
And a lot of rural residents, I've always said, hey, you don't have to drive in, half an hour. You can just, you can zoom in and participate.
Yeah.
And they can watch.
Even if you're ill, you don't have to share it
Right,
with us. You can.
Right. It's an improved option since,
Yeah.
technology and everything.
So 70% of the people said they would prefer to have a 6 p.m. start time of the county board meeting. Some of the responses showed that they would prefer to have to keep it at the 7 p.m. Just because it reduces, if it would start at 6 p.m., it reduces my ability to attend the county board meeting if needed. I have a St. Charles City Council meeting the fourth Tuesday at 6 p.m., so that would conflict. Otherwise, it was, I see no negative impact, no negative impact. Otherwise, the preference would be to move it to 6 p.m.
Heidi, how
But
many responses? What was the sample size?
I'm sorry, what was that?
How many total responses? 70% of how many people?
11.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah, plus one. Plus one. We got the plus. Well, with those kind of results, and again, if we need to do a major public hearing, we can always, and a lot of times in the past, we haven't done our public hearings even here in this
Right.
facility because it's too small.
Right.
If we would need to do a major public hearing, that can be flexed to a
Yep.
different time
Definitely.
because it probably would be a different location too. So that still gives us that flexibility. So I guess I would, I don't know how we make this happen. I would say, let's try it. Let's move to 5 o'clock committee of the board and then a 6 o'clock county board meeting starting in whenever.
Is it an issue where we should take a formal vote at a board meeting on it?
Right, we'll
Yeah,
move
okay.
this forward
Yeah.
to the
And I'm
next
comfortable with
meeting.
that. That's
Yeah.
And maybe give more staff a chance to weigh in. 11 is a good start, but it would be better, I think, to hear from more staff.
Yeah.
We
Well,
actually
with
only
more-
surveyed management.
Yeah, management.
Oh, in that case, definitely needed.
Yeah.
Well, that's a pretty good.
Good place to start.
Well, I take the point that not
It's
to.
Dave Kramer. He's
Yes,
not-
of course. Well, I wasn't
So-
going to go there, but yes,
Yeah,
to
it's
break
Dave.
someone's anonymity, it's like I see the importance
That's
of
his other job.
if there is an important issue for Road and Bridge that we need him to be able to be here.
Mhm.
So
You could also change the agenda such that.
yeah, well, or it has to happen on the
Yep.
first meeting when it's in the morning, but
Definitely.
Or placing it later, like last on the agenda.
Yes.
okay, that's a great idea.
I mean, there's other
Yep.
ways to get from A to Z.
Give him he could zoom in if it's
Mhm.
if it's a burning issue, or he has other staff that could present,
Mhm.
the issue if it's a burning issue. Okay.
All right. So it sounds like that's pretty unanimous.
So we're doing rough consensus. We're not going to vote.
No.
Okay. We're talking.
Well, whenever,
I'm joking.
yeah. 2025, 2026.
2026. Yeah, there you go.
Now I'll check the deer schedule. You know, the deer are moving and they seem to move.
So at the next normal meeting, you'll have.
The only
more
move with the
information.
signs.
Or when it fits, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, even better.
Yeah, I mean, because it's not
No, it's not.
not critical that we
Right.
get it immediately. Okay. So if we're done there, discuss the administration / personnel structure. And then there was a memo that was provided to us in our packet. I'll just say that I didn't quite understand the question, so maybe someone could explain that to me. I felt like I got an answer to a question when I didn't know what the question was.
Well, I can start off. I had talked with Maureen about looking at more than one option, because I think it's very important to realize that Maureen, we can't expect more out of the county administrator if they're still doing 2 jobs, but we need to fill the other position before we can expect. And there's a lot of things that are bottled up that we all want to get addressed, a lot of positions to be filled and other issues to attend to. So we need to get that other position. The question is, what is that other position? Is it the existing one, or is it moving back to a personnel director or some other kind of configuration? So that's the question, I believe. And this was Maureen's answer to it. This is, I guess, your recommendation, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And if I'm right in summarizing the letter, the recommendation is that you will sometime in the near future have a concrete idea, but not yet.
Well, it isn't concrete because we wouldn't know exactly who or what characteristics, skills, and abilities the new person would bring in.
No, I was thinking it's anticipated that a recommendation will be forthcoming soon, but not quite yet.
As to the roles and
Yes,
responsibilities.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I would just say that I very strongly support having an assistant county administrator. I think that it has a lot of value. I think that it's been really critical, especially with everything that was going on during the pandemic. And if we had all the money in the world, I would say, yes, let's have 2 positions. Let's have a full-time assistant county administrator and a full-time HR director. I don't know that in the world the way it is, that's possible. And we certainly didn't budget for that in 2023. But I don't want to lose the assistant county administrator position. I think that it's extremely valuable. Mr. Olson?
I can think of, the instances, since it's been implemented, which was, I believe, when they're doing ABER.
07 flood. Bob Reinhardt. Wasn't it?
The
We talked
assistant
about it.
position was 2010.
Oh, okay, but we talked about it back
Yeah.
then.
So
I remember discussing.
That's been discussed for a long time and been implemented, and I think it's one of those instances where we found that we did it right, because it's paid off to have somebody that could hit the ground running in a couple situations where we needed them to hit the ground running. So I would encourage that we, in some aspect, keep that type of position open.
All depends on the money. And is there a difference between a personnel director and an HR person? Is there a distinction between or is it just a term that's used for that general area?
Well, an HR person could be at varying levels. Not management, can be more technical. It could be a manager. It could be the main difference with a director is they are typically the department head of personnel.
Okay, are you asking if there's a difference between a human resources director and a personnel director?
Yeah.
I think not.
Oh,
I
no,
think
that's the
just
same. I'm sorry.
different
I
names for the same
misunderstood the
position.
question.
Okay, all right. Well, again, and it depends, I understand having an assistant county administrator position, but it comes with I think a large price tag. And I don't know that we can afford that. We're not a growth county. We're not growing. We're pretty stagnant in our size and our scope. But having somebody, certain responsibilities delegated to certain areas makes sense. But again, to have a quote assistant county administrator, if you look through the I use that AMC handbook quite often, and there's very few counties that have that as a distinctive role, if you look at their county structure. But somebody has the, you shift it to the county board chair. They assume, in the case, well, seriously, in the case when look at Houston County, they don't even have a coordinator and they function, I think, quite well. You shift the responsibilities and stuff depending on the situation, but to give somebody the title and everything is going to be, I think, more money than I'm willing to do in administrative functions in our county, because I don't see that growing. I see we should have less. We need boots on the ground. We don't need more head honchos.
I want to say things from different perspectives. One concern I have is the tendency in both public and private organizations, the closer we get to the top of the food chain, the more likely it is for administrators to have assistants or backups. And it's a tendency to have upper administration have backups and assistants where you really need more money and more attention is people who are on the front lines doing the work. So that's one concern I have going into this, is a tendency of management to see its needs. And we have needs all across the county at all levels of the county, et cetera. And it would be nice to have, in a way, kind of someone warming up in the bullpen for every position in the county, but that's maybe a luxury I'm not sure if we can afford. But at the same time, I want to be careful about being penny wise and pound foolish, as I think all across the county, and this is not just the county, it's the city, it's like every agency, private and public, is it's a hard time. It's hard finding skilled staff. So we're asking a lot of staff to do 2 or 3 different jobs, and we're burning people out. It's saving money in the short term, but we're burning people out, and that's going to be foolish in the long run. I think Kay has her hand raised. I want to come back, but go ahead, Kay.
Madam Chair and County Board, Kay Qualley, Planning and Environmental Services Director. Thanks for the opportunity to join your discussion. Just one thought. We have some very experienced department heads in the operational area that have maybe more than a decade of service that could be considered for an assistant position rather than perhaps the model that we've had in the past. So just something to think about that occurred to me during your discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. So I don't have a strong opinion yet, but I would like to see, first of all, I want to get it filled sooner rather than later. I don't want this to keep on going, because we need to have 2 people doing 2 jobs, not 1 person doing 2 jobs. But I would like to see kind of the pros and cons and a dollar amount for the different personnel director, pros and cons, and a cost, which I realize are not cheap either. I've been doing some informal surveying and more sticker shock in terms of what even personnel directors cost in public and private entities. But also just as like pros and cons of a personnel director, pros and cons of what we have. And I was around, this happened near the end of my 2nd term, where we made that transition. When Dwayne Hebert came on, he made us a recommendation to create this new position, et cetera. And I remember at the time I had some concerns about it, but I did eventually support it. But I think that I would like to see side by side, but I do want this done sooner rather than later. So that person, whatever it is, a personnel director or assistant / personnel director, can start working to fill all kinds of openings we have across the county. So, but speaking for myself only, I would like to see them pros and cons of each option.
I think, though, if we do that, I'd really, I'm to take Ms. Qualley's comments in there. So in my experience in the corporate world, succession planning, I mean, typically people would come from a specific area, but that wasn't necessary, and rotations were often a valuable thing. So all I'm saying is in terms of your request of what you're saying you want to see side by side, I would also like us to be fully informed and have a comparison of what it would take if we had 2 actual full-time and separate positions. I don't think that's what this board will do, because I think that'll be kind of, like I said, we didn't budget for it this year. But I also would like us to think about then what other alternatives? The city has always had an assistant and that person runs Park and Rec. And I think because Park and Rec is one of their bigger, sections. So, but I don't think that it is necessarily has to be with HR, but if there are reasons why that makes more sense, then that's great.
So you're suggesting, I'm sorry, Marcia, go ahead.
No, Commissioner Olson
Yep.
and then Commissioner Ward and then you.
I think if I remember the discussion correctly back and when this was created, there were two things that were brought to the forefront was number one, it's critical that we have a backup in that position in case something happened, and by golly, it did.
Yep.
And number two, that Maureen was the right person for the job. So in saying that, it doesn't necessarily have to be the HR person. As Kay has expressed that I would think the administrator would know and recognize personnel in other areas of the county that maybe have the talent and demeanor to work to serve in that position. So it doesn't necessarily have to be this position, but again, I think that's the administrator's job.
Commissioner Ward and then Commissioner Regley.
Well, an administrator works at the will of the board. So I mean, the board has to set the tone for all discussions and all, projects and things moving forward. With Ms. Qualley's very valid team management. We used to have a very robust, I think, for better or worse, a team management. All department heads got together. Now we realized it was sometimes an expensive meeting, having all the department heads sitting at and hashing things out. But actually the whole team knowing what's going on throughout the county so that if something does happen to one individual, the rest of the team can, make the system still work. So I would like in that mix of analysis and such as to, how does the whole team function within Winona County and each expertise? We can't expect any one person to know the expertise in all the areas that we're responsible. We don't just get to play with parks and recreation. We got, human services, roads and bridges, the jail, all the good things in our society that we get to do. So, I mean, again, a team approach I would like to really emphasize in moving forward. Not just one individual doing their own thing.
So are we comfortable with just having this conversation today and then waiting for a recommendation? And having that, once that's possible, to have that here at the committee of the board
Yeah, I think
meeting?
the recommendation needs to come back here to have more discussion before we take any
But I'm certainly comfortable waiting.
Yeah,
That
but
was
not to put it on a board where we take action at this point. We're still figuring it out,
Well,
discussing it.
I mean, would 2 weeks be enough for you to gather information?
No.
You're still doing two jobs.
Yeah.
Now you're giving a third and a fourth one.
Well, and I also wanted to add, like right now, I'm leaning towards back to a personnel director, but Chris, you had talked about adding a third option, like pros and cons and a price tag. So I'm also open to that, looking at just personnel director, the existing structure, and then the third option as well. But I would like to do it sooner rather than later, so we can have her having the administrator just do one job versus two jobs.
But Ms. Holte, I mean, you've got a core staff that are very skilled and so what's not getting done that needs to be done? Are we covering all the
How much
bases?
I
time
think
you
probably the
have?
question to ask
Pardon me?
is,
How much time do you have?
yeah, I mean, I think
Well,
the
I mean,
question
you
is,
have to prioritize.
I think the question is, what is Maureen having to do that she can't do as county administrator because she's still doing it for human resources?
Can she delegate? I mean, that's what I'm asking. I don't know. I mean, I know, how are we set with the unions? We're still negotiating with all of them?
No, we have
We're
three.
We're doing better on
We
that.
have three open yet.
Okay, all right. I mean, I don't know what your day entails. I don't follow you around. I mean, I assume that the things are getting done, but is there things that can be prioritized, shifted? Other staff that are already, pretty skilled in expand their responsibilities and roles?
We've already done that.
Okay, all right.
I do think it's important to add somebody else. The question is, what is that person? Yeah. And 2 weeks isn't enough time?
Two
No.
weeks from
Pros and cons?
2 weeks from July 25th. 2025.
We need to get, that position filled so we can start filling other positions or more actively working on those other positions. We have too many people doing too many different jobs.
Well, and I think, I don't know that it's fair to say the issue with the open positions is really just because
No,
some
it's-
clog in HR. It's like, there,
It's-
it is very difficult to hire people right now.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, it is. It's just, it's the economy and the workforce shortage.
Any further discussion?
So how much time do you need, Maureen?
I don't know, Dwayne.
And I should let the board know, I told Maureen this, and I apologize. This is for the board and to the media, I guess, the public too. About a year ago, my wife and I had planned a trip. Part of the agreement for me to the county board is we have to do more trips together. So I'm going to physically not be here for the first meeting in April. So I don't know if I can zoom in or not, but I'll be gone. I apologize. When I saw the conflict, for a second considered asking to change the trip.
There's rules though, but you can Zoom, but you can't
We
vote.
just have to, no, he
Right.
can vote. We just have to post his location.
Okay, but you can only do,
Aruba.
isn't
Just
it
one of
something you
us.
can only do that so many times?
I
There's
think
some rules.
Just one of us can do it, right? We can't all.
No, everyone can't do it,
No,
but
But,
I mean,
yeah.
I think I should probably just say that I won't be here at all. I should probably just keep that simple. So I'll be in
no,
Arizona.
I mean, if you can Zoom, but I know they set some rules and it was pandemic rules and then it was post-pandemic rules.
Right.
And I
I
don't
feel
know.
bad because I don't like missing school. I don't like missing anything. So
Yeah.
but what marital bliss.
Okay,
That's just a heads up. So
Anything else?
so put the big heavy stuff on the April 1st meeting when you can't vote.
yeah,
And then we have a
Yeah.
three-member board.
Yeah.
you need 3 votes though. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So you'll let us know later on.
You work on it in your spare time.
someday.
Someday. All right. That's it. I
If
think.
there is no,
The Mighty Mississippi, that'll be
Oh.
on the next committee of the board then?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and Maureen was gonna make copies of,
Yep.
of the letter that,
We'll
thank
get
you
it
for that.
scanned.
Appreciate
Goodhue
it.
County.
So that would be the only one then, right? As of now.
I think so, yeah. All right, I guess we can,
We just adjourned by standing up.
yeah, we'll just leave.
Right,
It
don't-
needs to
go
be
get
a
another
formal
donut.
motion.
Oh,
We
yeah,
need a
okay.
formal motion.
Okay, yeah, in case if you want to leave, maybe you'd consider making to adjourn.
Move to adjourn the committee of the board meeting.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Bagley's moved, Commissioner Olson has seconded. Is there further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye if you want to adjourn. Aye. Anyone opposed? We are adjourned.